We are going live, and we are thankfully posting to the right to the right thing. So, welcome everybody. It is the 1 second. It is the third Wednesday of the month. Welcome everybody to the Kubernetes office hours. Are you in the channel? Allison, I see you typing. How do I sound? I'm pretty sure I have stereo sound today. Welcome Allison, listening in from the UK. This is the Kubernetes office hours, the live stream where we hop on YouTube and then we answer all your Kubernetes questions over the course of the next hour. So if you have them, you can start typing them in the channel. And if you have no idea how this works, don't worry, we will explain how it works. And thanks all of you who are listening so far. Awesome. Thanks. Who is it? Who's that horse? Oh, that's Morgan. That's Morgan in chat with the horse emoji. Good to see you, Morgan. It's been a while. All right, let's do some quick introductions here to our West Coast / Oceania / I don't know, I guess that whole side of the hemisphere time zone. So we'll go Derek, Marky, Brian, Josh, and Dave. Let's go in that order.
Hi, I'm Derek. I work for VMware. I run Kubernetes clusters as an SRE for our internal development teams with some production workloads there. Been with VMware for a little over 6 months now and been doing Kubernetes stuff for about a little over 2 years. And I'm a release lead shadow in the bug triage team, and this is my second time doing the office hours. So happy to be here and hope I can answer some good questions.
Hello, I'm Marky Jackson. I am the what do? I do the mentoring. I am for Kubernetes. I also am the release manager associate, and I do all kinds of other things with Jenkins and Spinnaker, and I'm super happy to be here.
Am I next?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Josh Burkus. I work for Red Hat. I work with Marky on mentoring. I do several other things for contributor experience. Am perennially involved with the release team. Only not for a while. Lately, I've been mostly working a lot on stuff in the CNCF for trying to get the CNCF organized.
I'm Brian. I work with Derek actually at VMware. We're both on the same team. I'm actually the compliance lead, so I do all the security and a lot of the orchestration around securing the infrastructure and the containers.
Awesome.
And do SRE. So.
And Dave, when you close out our intros.
Yeah, my name is Dave Strebel. So I work at Microsoft on the Azure Global Black Belt team, focused around Kubernetes and the open source ecosystem around it. Help customers implement Kubernetes and focus a lot in day 2 operations. Awesome.
And something we touched on this morning is black belt, like actually in your title, like on your resume. Do you get to put that in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Man. I will tell you, my kids were disappointed when they knew I didn't actually have a black belt. So
they're like, what's a black belt in software?
You can order those on Amazon.
All right, so welcome everybody. We've introduced ourselves, Brian and Derek. This is your first time, I believe, so welcome to the show. The way it works, those of you listening out there, is these panelists are all volunteers. So if you're looking for a way to give back to the community, it's an hour a month, and I basically say, hey, here's the time slot. Who could show up? And we have a pool of people. If you could show up, you show up. We could do a show. If not, it's fine. We usually have enough people. So it's definitely a great way to get started in the project. This program has been pretty successful, I think, in the past 3 years, where a lot of panelists move on to go to do other things in Kubernetes and become things like steering committee members and stuff. So it's like a great way to get started. And especially those of you that have production experience and operations, maybe don't want to hack on the code, this is a great way to help people out. So before we get started, here are the ground rules. So this is a Kubernetes event, so the code of conduct is in effect, so please be excellent to each other. This is also a judgment-free zone. Everyone had to start from somewhere, so please help out your buddy by having a supportive environment in the channel and things like that. If you're listening in the channel, please let us know where you're in the world you're listening from. We like to see where you're from. Panelists, you're encouraged to, I skipped one. And while we will do our best to answer your question, we don't really have access to your cluster and like don't want to SSH to your stuff live on the air and stuff. So any of that kind of live debugging is pretty much on topic, off topic. I mean, but we will do our best to get you moving down what the next step is, maybe where the log is, or get you into the mindset that these folks use into figuring out how to unspool a problem to figure it out. Panelists, you're encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and your pro tips. And audience, you can help us out by pasting URLs to the official docs, blogs, or anything that might be relevant to the topic at hand. So usually while the panelists are answering a question and you're off in the background Googling, I cannot tell you every single episode that we've had, I've learned about a new tool or a new project on GitHub just from people in the community sharing tips, and that's always useful. And what I do is at the end of the show, I grab all of the URLs and then I whack them into the forum thread on discuss.kubernetes.io, and you can subscribe to the office hours tags there and get the videos and all the notes and URLs in your inbox at your convenience. Very handy. You can also help us out by tweeting, spreading the word, paying it forward. Really love it when there's teams at work, have us in the background during the lunch hour or something like that, back when we used to go to offices, that sort of thing. So feel free to consume this content as much as you want. And as always, if you want to rotate into the panelists, let us know. But before we do start, I do want to thank the following companies for supporting the community with their developer volunteers: Giant Swarm, StockX, VMware, Red Hat, Utility Warehouse, Spectrum, and Sysdig. And as always, a special thanks to the CNCF for sponsoring our t-shirt giveaway. So how this works is you'll post questions in the Slack. We will answer them. And if we address your question in Slack, we will have a little lottery at the end, and I'll give away 2 t-shirts. But you have to wait till the end to get your t-shirt. That's how it works. And as always, all of us forgot to wear the Kubernetes shirt that we're giving away because that's our meme now, but it's fine. It's a great looking shirt. It's the same one that you get when you go to KubeCon, and it's pretty high quality. And with that, panel, you ready? I see lots of familiar faces in the chat. So I see Dan. Oh, cool. Jeremy Rickard is here, our 1.20 release manager. So that's always handy. Feel free to start typing your questions. If you're listening in and don't have any questions yet, we have a few things that we do want to talk about. First, why don't we get the Helm warning thing out of the way? We did that this morning. So does anyone want to talk to this? Anyone using Helm in production, or do you want me to just say what we talked about this morning?
You say what we talked about this morning, but I remember something else we had to add to that.
Sure.
Not just the Helm, but the Docker Hub. Forgot about that one.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. So let's get the links here. I'll grab the links here from the doc from this morning. The TLDR is the stable charts repo is going away, right? And or moving or being split. Some people or some organizations have stood up their own thing. I guess some of them are going to GitHub. I'm not sure. But if we look at this is what I did this morning because the information is spread over a few blog posts. If you check out the Helm blog, there's lots of stuff going on there. As far as the Helm deprecation timeline, you definitely should be well on your way to moving to Helm 3 if you haven't already. And there's a lot of deadlines here that you need to check out. One in particular in November is coming up, which is the cutoff date for the hub. But if you look at that blog post, you will see all the information that you need for those of you who are using Helm. And then the second one that we wanted to talk about was, you want this one? And I'll paste the link.
Docker Hub.
Yes.
November 1st, I believe, Docker Hub will be limiting. They will be rate limiting non-authenticated pools. It will be 600, I think it was, 600 or 500 for a 6-hour period. So just know that that's coming up. That
I thought it was lower than that when I checked the other day, because we've been experiencing lots and lots of throttling from them, and I thought it was only 200.
200. What's the
200 containers every 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
Was the last that they showed.
So basically don't use Docker Hub if you're running a tutorial.
Yeah, I mean 206 hours. That's
Yeah, so anonymous is 100 polls, and authenticated with the Docker ID is 200.
Yes.
interesting.
For 6 hours.
That pro plan is unlimited, is not actually unlimited, FYI.
Oh, interesting. Allison, thanks for the plan information there.
We are actually running into that unlimited being rate limited.
Okay.
I
That's
had the
fair.
same thing happen, and I stopped paying for my pro and was like, I'm moving everything to GitHub.
So, quick question for some of you here. How many of you, and at what scale, do you determine whether you're running your own private registry or not? Let me start with my own very first questions here to all of these announcements. Is this something that, so I'm assuming for certain customers, those of you that are serving customers, they're always going to want to have their own private stuff, right? So they can do things. But generally speaking, are there size? What do you look for when you decide? That's probably a better question. What do you look for when you decide whether you're going to just YOLO Docker pull or, set up an actual proper egress filtering capable kind of thing?
So for some of the things that I maintain individually, if I realize that I have a lot of people using it, like I can see like contributions or clones or things like that, and or repost things, that's how I determine it. If I've gotten like 500 in a week, then I realize, okay, maybe I've got to do it. Or if somebody has sponsored, then I think like it's a little bit more official, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pay the bills or something.
Got you.
Like that.
SREs, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, so we use a hosted solution from JFrog, but we actually have a lot of like network connectivity issues with that. So we are exploring running our own harbor, in actually serving that as like a managed service to some of our tenants and development teams that we support. So it's kind of a dual-sided thing there where we can get a little more control at the flip side of more load on our team, I guess. But we're looking for stability there. Course features are great. I think the OCI compliant storage of Harbor is really exciting and cool.
Mm-hmm.
Some cool things we can do with that with artifact storage.
So what does that mean for normal people? Pretend that I'm used to talking about container images and OCI compliant things as just interchangeable words, even though they probably shouldn't be.
I mean, I think like whether to run your own or a hosted solution from someone else, you have to make the decision. Do you have the expertise, or is it worth just paying some X amount of dollars a month to kind of push that on someone else?
There's also pull-through caches that you can set up where if you're pulling a lot of containers but not necessarily hosting them, setting up a pull-through cache with your cluster will save a lot of network throughput. It will also save a ton of time because you're pulling them locally and caching them close to the cluster.
Mm-hmm.
If you have lots of clusters in many different regions, that's where it can come in handy. And as Derek said, we're actually looking at doing a hosted one as well as pull-through cache with the cluster so that we can actually not worry about network connections as much out to the world if something's going on, because boot up times for spinning up a cluster, if you're pulling a lot of large images, can take a long time.
And is there a specific one? I know there's one that has the word Nexus or Lexus in it or something.
Nexus is kind of a big hosted one, right?
Nexus Harbor has pull-through cache. There's a few of them that if you just look up pull-through cache, there's several that support it.
And Harbor just released version 2, correct? Their V2 code base?
Yeah, 2.1.
It requires 1.16 clusters.
Okay.
If you're doing Quay and OpenShift, you also can do pull through cache.
Okay, so Josh, you sort of answer a question. How do we pronounce that? It is Quay then, right? Not key?
It is pronounced Quay because pronouncing it correctly, key, is very confusing.
Okay, that's good to know.
But
so
it's been pronounced Quay since CoreOS released it back in 2017.
Okay, so options for people are Quay, Harbor. I'm I'm looking up some of the other
Honestly,
Artifactory.
Artifactory has it.
Okay.
right, one of the gooey things you can do that's only, one of the hackish things you can do is you can actually use pulp to cache images.
Pulp.
I don't know that I would recommend it over a purpose-built image repository, but it does work.
So, I mean, it looks like all the major image hosting things also have the pulp through proxy. So I guess do any of the major open source ones that you can self-host not do the proxy?
In free versions, no.
Yeah.
If you pay for them, yes.
Okay. Alrighty, that's good to know. Anything else we want to say about proxies and running your own registry?
There's one of the reasons to run your own registry. I don't work in production currently.
Okay.
Except for some open sourcey things that we support at Red Hat, but those aren't production like what Derek does.
Mm-hmm. Check your volume again, please. Sorry to interrupt you. Your volume.
You're right.
Yep.
The so the only production things I support are really lightweight. But for R&D, it is super useful for me to use a local registry, because if I'm churning through 50 different versions of an image because I keep making changes to it, I don't want to keep uploading those to a remote repository.
Okay. Brian Davis has a link for everyone here about using a registry as a pull-through cache from the Docker docs. Thanks for that.
And that one references Docker's open source registry as well.
Oh, so awesome.
It looks like even their registry supports it.
Nice. I'm just seeing if I can find a link to their GitHub. Docker registry overview. Where are you?
Dan says at the very end, if you're just stuck, you can do tarboss over FTP.
Definitely for sure.
Yeah, technically.
I love you for that, by the way, Dan.
It's
yeah. That's a good question. Ask any of y'all using OCI artifacts. Can someone kind of walk me through how we went from just these things hosting container images to OCI artifacts? And I'm pretty sure at some point we're just going to start using them as binary blob storage for random things.
I only know very little bit about it yet.
Okay.
Jeremy basically told me, hey, that's really cool, look at it. And I've done some surface level digging into it. So it's on my radar, but it is not something that I would consider myself to be.
Yep. And I'm tossing the GitHub link in there. Yeah, the reason I asked, because I was like, why aren't we keeping our my Flat Car Linux updates in that thing while we're at it? I don't know.
You love that flat car.
I love that flat car. Oh yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else with registries and things like that?
Yeah, I put a link to Harbor's page on OCI that provides some more.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Derek.
The benefits there.
Yeah.
we have a couple questions in channel.
We do. Let's go. Let's move on to that. The first question comes from Andeep. Am I right? Is that the first one? Let me scroll up here. It says, question, as a new Python developer, I was told to go through and fix formatting on readmes and fix some function signatures to convert positional arguments to keyword arguments. What can a newbie Golang developer do to contribute to Kubernetes? Fantastic question. Who wants to field this one first?
I mean, I would say there's probably always improvement around testing, right?
Yeah, there's improvement around testing. One of the things I would actually say is, if you're just getting started, look at a lot of the plugin projects. One of your problems is, if you're relatively new as a Go programmer, one of your problems you run into is a lot of the stuff in core Kubernetes, even the stuff marked with good first issue, still requires a lot of background knowledge. A lot of the plugins, cloud provider things, storage things, that sort of thing, are just smaller code bases and easier to get started with.
So you're saying an ancillary project around Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned testing. I know we mentioned testing. What's a good TLDR way to get involved in testing? Because when you say testing, that's a huge sphere of, like, we talking certain tests? Are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was thinking of increase test coverage,
Mm-hmm.
test reliability. I know we get quite a few flakes sometimes, although that may require some pretty deep knowledge of Kubernetes systems and the inner workings.
Okay.
Read through the issues in the repos and see if there's small bugs that people have filed that you can pick up.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to understand certain things, even look at closed merge requests and see what people have done and stuff like that. This year or two ago, had an issue with kind and opened a ticket, and then I was like, you know what, just start digging through and put up, find the issue and fix it, and then put up the your first MR or PR, and then have it merged, and then just continue from there.
Yeah, and there's also the good first issue label on the issues.
I always, for anybody that's new to a particular language, and I'll give this example around Go and Kubernetes, is find something that's being done. For example, in the release SIG, we have tools like Krell, and Krell works kind of with an algo. Start to just read through that code and see, like, if you can start to understand where things are, like, why this happens or why this does this. And you'll start to get a better understanding. One of the things I will also say is, if there's something that you don't understand and you want to understand it, don't be afraid to ask the question. Make sure you're never afraid to ask the question, because there's no such thing as a dumb question, because I've already asked it.
Yes. And if you're wondering where to ask your question, I plopped in a link there to SIG testing. Usually what I try to find to do is find out who owns the thing that you're looking at. And you can always see that there's a little file called owners, in the directory that will kind of tell you. And then you can find a SIG, a special interest group that does with that. So if you were to show up to the testing special interest group, which I plopped the link in, say, hey, show up to a meeting or the mailing list. I know Python. Who needs help somewhere? That's a great way to get started. Josh?
I will also give the shameless plug to mentoring. If there's somewhere that you'd like help understanding in, that's what the mentoring is for. And myself, Josh Burkus, you can definitely reach out to one of us, and we can help steer you in the right direction. So don't hesitate to Slack. I'll just speak for myself. Don't Slack Josh unless he says so.
Go ahead.
Definitely, if you ever want my Marky Jackson in Slack, definitely reach out. If there's something I can't help you with, I'll find someone that can help you with it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else about good first issues? And my last one, the way I got started, find a page in the documentation you do not like and fix it. And that's a good way to learn the processes, learn people, learn how things work, learn how the project is organized. And that's always a good way to start. All right. I hope that answers your question. Andy, feel free to ask more. If we do a partial answer and you want us to dive deep into another subject, feel free to just say, hey, can you, clarify this topic. All right. Moving on from Lee. Hello, Lee, watching from Asheville, North Carolina. I started a new job in July and haven't used Kubernetes since. I feel way out of the loop. I have a project coming up that involves managing Astronomer on EKS. Any general things or tips to look for on EKS? So I guess it's just a question about who's got experience in EKS and has any tips there. And I'm going to look up what Astronomer is here.
I was just looking it up, astronomer.io.
Got you.
Data pipelines with Apache Airflow. I believe
cool.
That's what he's referring to.
Let's have a look here.
I'm just going to throw out my advice, even though I work on the AKS side. But I think it applies to any cloud provider, and I harped on it in the earlier meeting, is really understand the networking model, because I see customers all the time struggle with this when they move cloud providers, because there's a lot of intricacies between different cloud providers, how they do networking, how their CNI model works. So you really want to understand that, because if you get it wrong, it can put you in a really bad place.
Anybody using EKS lately? Mario uses EKS, but he's in our EU session.
make sure you stay up on top of your releases, because as they release them, they will deprecate old ones and auto upgrade your clusters for you if you're, I think it's 2 versions behind, or on the 3rd version behind now.
Interesting.
So, but they've increased their release cadence a lot.
Yep.
I think it was 115 to 116. They took a long time, but reworked their entire release process, and now they are just releasing at a much faster cadence.
Yep. And that brings us up to a quick topic until we get the next questions. If you're just joining us, feel free to ask questions. With them kind of sorting out their release process to be able to catch up better. Meanwhile, upstream Kubernetes is deciding this year, obviously we only did 3 releases, or are doing 3 releases. Kubernetes is deciding, whether it wants to move to 3 releases permanently or not, or at least starting the discussions. I don't want to put any eggs before they hatch. What do y'all think about this? I think from a cloud provider perspective, that probably gives them a little bit more breathing room.
I am so for this, just to be able to not be always going. It actually gives, from a release perspective, it gives the team, time to clean up some of the things that we want to clean up, and we're not going all the time.
I'm tentatively for it. If you look at the discussion, and people brought up some issues, the trade-off here is always I've worked on a project that had releases once a year. And the problem with longer release cycles is you build up more changes for each release. So some things can get harder. There'll be a lot more pressure on us, for example, to keep on top of test failures early in the release cycle, which we have not been good about. So for example, if we go to 3 releases a year and we don't change how we treat test failures, come code freeze time, things are going to be worse. That said, we've had, one of the impetus behind this comes from the release team, because we've had a lot of problems with timing, particularly on the Q4 release.
Right.
Which is, between various national and international holidays and KubeCons, it's very hard to find code freeze and release dates, et cetera, that work.
Yeah, I've always found that the last release of the year always gets the short end of the stick, right? It's there's a KubeCon in there somewhere, holidays, and in the US there's Thanksgiving, that lands in a weird spot. So that's very interesting. Also, for those of you,
off to the release team for actually getting out during a world pandemic.
Yeah,
not a small, that's a huge feat.
Yeah, and it's also another variable I want to mention is, we're extending support of a release for a year now instead of, it was 9 months, right? It was 9 months before. So if you were on a hosted provider and you always feel like they're barely catching up, they fix their processes to be able to do that better. We're supporting releases now for an extra 3 months, and the possibility of slowing down the cadence. Maybe it doesn't feel like, ops people are just constantly on this upgrade treadmill that.
So I'll throw this out there. I was sold on it at first. Then I realized, because this topic's near and dear to me, because I spent all day dealing with somebody that has not upgraded their cluster and is out of support, and it's going from 115 to 116 with deprecated APIs.
Right.
Even if you give users extra time to upgrade, they will not. People that don't keep up on upgrades will still tend to go down that path, even though they got longer time.
Right.
So I love that Brian brought up, one of the things to really keep an eye out on is making sure you're keeping up with releases and making sure you're automating those processes. Because when you get way out of date of versions, cluster upgrades just become much more fragile.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that too. We're experiencing that exact issue with one of our major tenants on our clusters. Is they're waiting to the last minute to remove their deprecated APIs, right? So we're in a holding pattern basically until we can upgrade from 115 to 116, until they have a chance to work on it. And they're never going to work on it right until it's a fire drill, because they have other business pressures and things to work on too.
Right.
So,
and typically,
do you
see?
Cons, right?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there.
All right, you're good.
Do you typically see them just out of curious for the people that are, kind of waiting till the last minute, do they usually move up to the next supported version, or do they kind of like try to set themselves up in the future? Maybe, it's like, can we go 2, or do they look at certain features at the new release that they're like, I want that one? Or is it just like whatever the last one I could possibly get away with?
Yeah, I mean, at least in this case, I think they're targeting just enough to check the box and make sure that they won't have production issues, and then they have to go back to other priorities. And I think there's some in 1.17. I think some more APIs are deprecated, right? For I forget what it was, but yeah, there's another version that got deprecated. That's going to be another.
Yeah, that was a large wave.
122, I think, is when that'll finally come due, right?
Yeah, there's going to be more deprecations in 122, I believe.
We're trying to rework.
I know a company, they will go nameless. They are still on a 1.10 cluster.
Keep on rocking. That was when RBAC got turned out by default, right? Was that 1.10?
Yeah, 1.10. That's
impressive.
Nice.
Still slugging away.
I know the 0.7 cluster that's still running.
Really?
Weren't you just talking about why they don't let you touch production?
Yeah.
Well,
it's actually an extremely hacked version of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
It is not mainstream Kubernetes at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they ever even could upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian, you were about to say something.
I was saying we're reworking our process to try to be able to upgrade faster, because of everything with it. We are, like Derek said, we're moving to 1.16, and then we want to move to 1.17, 1.18, so on and so forth, rather quick to get that down and to get us closer to mainline.
Yep. And Andeep is asking, are we expecting global outages because of the Docker registry GitHub S3 throttling November 1st? Anyone?
Guaranteed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And same with Helm. That's why.
Helm will be worse.
I don't know.
Run around like their hair is on fire. Guaranteed.
Well, you have to upgrade the version of Helm to keep 2 working.
Right.
And so that requires interaction, as where November 1st is just going to happen.
Yeah.
So Helm breaking, when it gets shut down, there's a lot of people going to be in panic mode versus throttling and all of that when Docker Hub changes theirs. But they've been slowly introducing it more and more from what it looks like.
Yeah.
That they're moving closer to their limits, because
I'll
we
give you
see
a great
it
example.
more and more every day.
The 1.16 API deprecations, as a project, we did everything we could to communicate that out and scream it from the highest mountains. And there are still companies that were like, I don't get why this won't work. And like, you got to change it. Deployments, it's changed. You can't use that API.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think, you're not going to wake up and the world's going to be on fire, because there's enough professional organizations out there who are taking care of this. But I suspect there will be much pain for a lot of folks ahead of the holidays, which is unfortunate, which is why, the Helm deprecation thing, every podcast, every person that we know has been like, hey, we're going to mention this in every single, like we do TGIK, as one of our shows. And it's like, we are mentioning this every week for the next 3 months to try to get the word out to do the best we can. And I know a lot of people have been doing that. So, I mean, we're kind of doing the best that we can have, stuff. And Andeep, looks like you have an AKS question, so feel free to write that up. Real quick, while we're talking about upgrades, I tweeted a little poll earlier today where it's how do you upgrade? Do you upgrade in place? Do you set up a new cluster, move stuff over? AKA the cluster API-ish kind of model, or C, do you want to be able to have that model but can't because of an application or something that makes you stuck upgrading in place? Just real quick, before we get to Andeep's question, how do y'all do upgrades?
We upgrade in place. We don't control the workloads, so
yes,
right. Talked about that last time a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And, so we're running on Amazon with COPS to help manage our clusters for now. I think we're looking at something that's a bit more automation friendly, like Cluster API or something like that.
Sure.
But today we're on COPS, and it's not that bad. It's not nearly as hard as it used to be, right? I mean, it has gotten quite a bit easier.
We are
I have a
having
really
to do
funny-
some
Oh, sorry.
trickery around upgrading though.
Yes, there is a caveat with COPS 115 to 116.
I have a really good funny story about COPS and this very obscure bug with MySQL and the way COPS does its address spacing with the 100.xxx. MySQL looks at that as a public address space, whereas COPS looks at that as public and private. And in the company that I worked for, we actually had to submit an upstream patch to MySQL because MySQL wouldn't run in a COPS cluster. Totally obscure thing.
Wow.
I just thought I'd share that.
Wasn't expecting that. Josh, upgrade in place, or do you new cluster?
Clusters. Yeah, because the clusters that I'm running are all really small clusters. And so as a result, it's actually vastly easier to spin up another small cluster, move things over, even with the extra steps, right? Because like the stuff, some of this, the reason why I'm involved with it is that we're actually running Postgres on those clusters.
Mm-hmm.
But it is easier to start up a new cluster, run Postgres replication between the two clusters, and shut
Got
down
you.
the old one, than it would be to upgrade in place and make sure that all of our storage was going to come up correctly.
Yeah, upgrading in place with storage frightens me. I don't know if it should, but probably it should. All right. So, Dave, do you have an upgrade strategy before we get to your question here from Andeep, which it looks like you're typing in chat?
Well, upgrade. Yeah, they're important. Just like I said, dealing with it like all day, and then you get into this weird spot where you also have other dependencies like Istio, like this customer's running, and what versions do you go? You can't just shoot for, I'm going straight to 119 from 1.15. So I can't stress enough to keep updated on your versions of Kubernetes. Cloud providers make it easy, but it's still something you have to plan for and keep like on top of.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about all the other dependencies inside. Obviously, not just the workloads, but the Istios, Knatives, all that other stuff. That, yeah,
it can get ugly really quick.
I think cluster size has a large play into that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, with a smaller cluster, it's easy to move everything. But what our largest cluster has over 1,200 pods running, and so moving those from one cluster to another, in a multi-tenant environment, stuff like that, it tons of time, tons of money, and tons of collaboration, and it would take months.
The human cost.
To have 15 teams move everything, as where if we can do it in a rolling upgrade, node by node, then on our PDBs and all of that stuff, and make sure people have them, then we can upgrade nodes at any time, and it still takes several hours and hours to upgrade clusters. Right.
But for them, they're kind of getting like the same experience they would on a hosted cloud, right? They're like, I don't know, I throw a workload on it. It's your problem. Yep. Awesome. Exactly. All right, let's get to Andeep's question here. When can I expect Ursa equivalent as opposed to IP Table's hack solution that is AAD pod identity? Secrets management is difficult enough already. This is an AKS specific question. I don't know what they're talking. Dave, is there any chance you could walk us through it?
For something for Azure Active Directory, so it's like for like pod identity and stuff.
Okay.
So I can answer that kind of outside this context.
Okay.
Because I don't know the direct answer right off.
I know. Poor Dave. You always show up, talk about Kubernetes, and people ask you Windows questions. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna start signing up for some other company.
Yeah.
Work for VMware.
Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so are you just going to connect Andeep to someone in AKS that can help them out with this?
I'll
okay,
connect Andeep.
That will work. Andeep, Dave's your man on the inside. You got a good one. Any other questions while we keep going? We are a lot on questions today, but that is okay. What else is
I
going
actually
on?
have
So, what's that?
I have one that Derek and I experienced in a former role, and I don't think we've ever got a good answer to.
Uh-huh.
We had a situation where every pod needed to have its own unique IP, public IP, for running a very large workload, basically 1,000 pods, and each one having its own public IP address natted to the container. And
without the use of 1,000 load balancers, because that
yes,
would
Yeah.
cost prohibitive.
and we never found a good solution for it. I mean, we even had some meetings with people at GCP and several others, and we never found a good solution
Yeah,
for it.
I was gonna ask, what did Falcon say? Yeah.
I was gonna say also, wait, where are you getting 1,000 public IPs from?
Cloud provider.
Cloud providers
Uh,
it was a workload that needed to be, every container needed to be unique and not routable. Like, they couldn't know about each other.
huh.
So it was for a sensitive type environment, but it was rather interesting. And it was working on a controller to basically get a GCP IP and route it to do a one-to-one mapping via IP tables was the only solution. But we never found like a industry standard or any cases where somebody else had to do that.
Yeah, because we do a lot of hiding pods from each other, but I don't think there's anything, in routing public IPs to stuff, because it's not something that comes up for anyone.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is
Except
like the
you.
most edge case thing we've ever had on the show.
Because I mean, like even an old VM infrastructure, I can't think that I ever had that particular problem.
I think our original approach was to do small nodes and do a daemon set, so they would NAT out of the host's IP address. I think then we still had to solve the ingress problem, right? Where traffic still had to come back in. I guess we could have exposed it as a node port, but
Was this a mill provider?
no, it wasn't
Yep.
a Canon.
Okay.
You're so secretive. We're all wondering like what you're really doing. That's what everyone is wondering. So Blaze has a question about running Calico instead of Flannel on K3D. Let me see here. Oh no, I'm messing up the chat on the stream there with the thread. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can make that any better. All right, we'll just deal with that as it goes. And I think I'm giving it the wrong cider block. How do y'all pronounce that, network people?
Cider. Yeah,
Thank you.
Later.
you got it.
CIDR.
Yeah, I'm a Michigander, so I default to cider, but I didn't know there was like some network thing. All right, Blaze, if you can give some more information, maybe do you have like an error or something? We'll give you some time to type there. And there's not a lot of people in the channel, so you could just stick it in the root. You don't have to thread it.
Yes, some of our clusters run Calico, so we have some Weave, some Calico, but we're not running K3D.
Mm-hmm.
So don't know about that piece.
Or Flannel.
Yeah.
So they are trying to enhance this. Are you all in the thread here? Blaze's thread. So we're gonna Blaze. I'm gonna give you a chance to kind of type out and explain what you're trying to do there, and then we will address Andeep's question and get back to you here while you're typing. Andeep asks, "Is there a project that the team prefers for packaging? Helm, customized, JSON? Ooh." And Noah's reminding everyone upstream has stayed very neutral in that battle. Sure, but I definitely want to hear what people are using and swapping the tips here.
Customize with Helm.
I mean, I work for Red Hat, so everything I do is an operator.
Yeah, I mean, so we do a lot
Sorry,
of
man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
How many operators are you folks up to on OpenShift?
I don't know. I'd have to look. It's a lot. You know.
Okay, so Josh like an operator, customized with Helm.
I personally like customize with Helm. I think that's a pretty good approach. I mean, I don't think there's any like one great solution, right? That's why it's still kind of an open arena for somebody to come in and really solve that problem for teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scaffold with customized with Helm, because then you get the build and all of the benefits of the other ones.
I actually do personal projects that I'm working on in that method.
Okay.
Allowing scaffold to code. Yep. To do customize on top of it.
The scaffold's got some cool stuff for like scaffold dev, where you can kind of do some like live coding and reloading on a cluster, whether it's like Minikube, Microcube, whatever, MicroK8s, or something remote, Raspberry Pi cluster, whatever.
Yep. I'm tossing the link to Scaffold here in chat.
There's, if you're doing any type of development with local, like you said, local dev, Scaffold recognizes kind clusters and will auto push to the cluster repo for you inside of kind and stuff like that. So it has a lot of cool features you can do in the different profiles for targeting different clusters.
As a cluster operator, needing to run things like Prometheus and Grafana and some logging instrumentations like that, don't really have a choice but to consume Helm charts. So, I mean, so the Helm charts that we do consume, we save them in our repository and store them so we don't get hit with unexpected changes.
Mm-hmm.
It does make it a little more work to keep the Helm chart templates themselves up to date.
I was going to ask, do you...
There is greater than the downside of Helm charts getting updated and something breaking, or Helm going down or changing repositories or things like that.
So do you sync those, or do you like fork them? We are now, this one is now ours, and then
we fork them and they're stored like we have a largely monorepo for our stuff, and we have a Helm folder, and most things are in there.
And is there like a reconciliation process where you're like, wow, we forked this one, 9 months ago. We should probably see upstream. What?
There should be.
Yeah.
You
could just nod and not answer, and then we'll just assume. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. So like everyone else. Got you.
Just look
Brian, what do you prefer?
Replicated ship. The company Replicated HQ makes ship.
Okay.
Which was replaced by COTS, KOTS. And that allows you to take Helm charts and turn them into straight up YAML files with customized, and you can configure them and do all kinds of stuff.
Is this it right here?
And those were actually pretty nice. Yeah. So ship was the old one. They replaced it with COTS, but it allows you to do a lot of customization to it and do layers. It breaks it all in, and you can add patches, add your own patches. It has a UI to build all that out.
Right.
And then you can throw that into Scaffold and customize and whatever else you want.
Huh.
And for anyone that doesn't know what Replicated's main product is they allow for easy licensing for your software. So if you're going to deploy software to somebody or a Helm chart, you can use Replicated for their licensing.
Oh, so if I have a chart and I want to slap a EULA in front of it or something. Got you. Okay. Well, I'd not heard of COTS before. That's a good one. See, always going to learn something new.
Shout out to Mark if you're watching this. I remembered what Replicated was.
So you like their stuff?
I mean, for what it does, yeah. There's pros and cons to everything, but
yeah,
for what it does, it helps, a software company work on licensing.
Got you. Dave, you have any opinions on this workflow?
Oh, sorry, I was looking up something for the K3D question.
Oh, that's fine.
For anybody that has,
I meant Dave. I think Dave went AFK. It's fine.
Cube Color is it's great.
Which one's this one?
Using any type of shell colors or VI colors, or it basically it's a wrapper around kubectl to handle all color coding.
Ooh, pretty.
Yep.
I like it. There's an ncurses one. It's like cube top looking thing. We mention it all the time. I can't think of it right now. If someone has a URL, that's a good one.
K9S, I think. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, K9S. Let me look.
It looks like Blaze has gotten most of his question out.
Yeah, right. Let's go back to it here. All right. Thanks for your patience there, Blaze. Whoa. Okay. Stuff. I am sorry on the live stream here. I'm trying to. I wasn't set up for threaded conversations here in the chat. There we go. Okay, so he's trying to advance this enclave do control play.info. Those are my notes from earlier rev. So when I create a cluster INDEP, I guess I'm confused about the difference between my API cluster and node IPs. Derek, were you looking at this?
Yeah, I was trying to.
Okay.
K3D is basically a wraparound K3S, right?
That is my understanding.
I guess I'm a little confused still on what the issue is.
In the CIDR blocks, it shouldn't matter whether you use 172.30 or 10.x. Those should make no difference. They should both be transparent. Just as long as it's something different than your local network, you should be fine.
Yeah. So I guess the assumption here is that his host network is in the 192.168/16 range.
Well, so it's odd that it says it's listening at 0.0, or that the master is running at that. Normally it's the IP that it's running at, because 0.0 isn't routable.
Yeah, I think K3S runs as like a daemon on the host, right? Because it's basically like a slimmed down kubelet with some extra stuff built in, so you don't have to run as much.
Oh, okay.
Or extra stuff cut out, I think is what it is, right?
K3S is what I'm using for my pies, but it's been a few months since I've touched it.
Castro, just a heads up for the wrap up.
Oh, nuts. We're running out of time. Yeah.
One last thing on that, using whether it's K3S, K3D, when trying to do something like that, especially with Calico with Flannel on top of K3D, I would step through it and make sure you can, hit each breakpoint, get K3D up and running, as it is in the guide, and then add in Calico, and then add in Flannel. Don't try to do it all at once, because when you run into an error, you can't figure out which one it is, and it's easier to step through. If I only have one thing at a time that breaks, then I know exactly what to troubleshoot.
Yeah. So Blaze says AFK, being dead for reviewing. If someone wants to look through my notes in the thread and give me some networking tips, I'd be grateful. Those of you listening, if you can check that out, they linked it there. Sorry, I was not paying attention to the clock there. But thanks for hopping in, Blaze. Let me do the t-shirt raffle real quick.
I actually got my 8-sided dice ready.
Oh, you want to roll it?
You want me to?
Yeah, roll it.
We're doing one, right?
We're doing two.
I'm going to drop it in the Slack.
All right, 3 and 7. That is... goes and deep and Lee 8 Limbed. Are you still on there? Type furiously. If not, I will be PMing you after this show with I'm going to need your email address. You'll go to store.cncf.io and you'll have a cool Kubernetes shirt. Thanks for joining us. Any final thoughts and comments after we go live off Hangout for a minute panel, and that will be fun. Anybody else? Chat, last call. Thank you so much for listening. We do this every Wednesday. As far as this time slot, we've been moving around the West Coast office hours trying to find a sweet spot. And from looking at the metrics, actually, we had a lot of people listening in this time compared to the other slots that we have tried. So if this works for you and you are in that time zone, please feel free to just type, let us know if this is useful for you, or earlier in the day or later in the day works for you. We will kind of put this slot where it needs to go. So with that, congratulations. I will PM the two of you that have worn the T-shirts. Any last final comments, panel?
I do have one. I would like to give a shout out to, I'm going to probably butcher this, but your handle is my dog, not that. Borko, Borko. Thank you for your PR, catching the time for the West Coast in our notes.
Yeah.
You caught that. You put a PR in. That was your first PR. I need to reach out to you because I got something special for you.
Awesome. Yeah, we all love to celebrate someone it's their very first time. What is that? Dr. Thorpe. Thanks y'all first time joining. Yeah, fantastic. We've been running this show for years, and we hope to continue to expand it and give it the love it deserves. Thanks everyone, and congratulations, Borko, again on your first pull requests for Kubernetes. And with that, we are signing off. We are conflicting with KubeCon next month, so we probably won't be doing office hours. We might try to sneak something in, but if we do, we'll give you plenty of heads up. We'll have to see how people's workloads and stuff. But if not, we definitely won't be here in December. So if that doesn't end up happening, we will see everyone in 2021. Thanks again, panel, for joining, and stick around for a minute. The rest of you, we will see you all later, and good luck. Remember, no upgrades on Fridays. Thanks, everyone.